£50 with your Tesco Club card or app.
You should get to go more often.
Food Love Stories brought to you by Tesco.
The political drama continues at Downing Street. After just 45 days, Prime Minister Liz Truss's tenure is over.
I am resigning as leader of the Conservative Party.
Her time was brief, the shortest in history, but full of more twists and turns than we've seen in quite some time. So her position became untenable and she admitted defeat.
I recognise, though, given the situation, I cannot deliver the mandate on which I was elected by the Conservative Party.
With the economy in a state of disarray, someone needs to move in here and untangle the mess, and quickly. Rishi Sunak and Boris Johnson want the job. The Tory party has up to 7 days to make up their minds. But the First Ministers of Scotland and Wales and Labour say they've had enough and want the wider public to decide.
What we can't now have is a revolving door of chaos, the next experiment with the next Tory leader. There is an alternative, and that's a stable Labour government. And the public are entitled to have a say on this, and there should be a general election.
Well, we'll run through the likely runners and riders with our political teams, who will, of course, have their own analysis of the day. Also on tonight's programme. After a 3-year international battle by Harry Dunn's family, the American woman who was driving the car admits causing the death of the teenager. And
remember the one condition, the one rule. You remain loyal to this.
Crown is released.
Downing Street. This is the ITV Evening News with Charlene White.
Good evening from Downing Street, where in record time yet another Prime Minister stood right over there and handed in their resignation. Another chaotic chapter in the history of modern day politics. Following yesterday's turbulent scenes in Parliament, and as more of her own MPs called for her to quit, Liz Truss threw in the towel and resigned as Prime Minister. In a brief speech outside the door of number 10, she said she couldn't deliver the mandate on which she'd been elected, but remarkably took none of the blame. The political turmoil, though, is far from over, nor is the Conservative Party infighting, a situation which has real-life consequences for those up and down the country simply struggling to survive in the middle of a cost-of-living crisis. But there will now be a very short leadership contest. Among those considering running are Boris Johnson and rival Rishi Sunak. In the first of our reports, here's our political editor, Robert Peston.
At 1:30 today, the Prime Minister came out to make history, the wrong kind for her, because she was about to set the record for being the shortest-serving Prime Minister in history. She began by talking about how she'd persuaded Tory members to back her in the summer.
We set out a vision for a that would take advantage of the freedoms of Brexit. I recognise, though, given I cannot deliver the mandate on which I was elected by the Conservative Party. I have therefore spoken to His Majesty the King to notify him that I am resigning as leader of the Conservative Party.
Liz Truss said that a couple of hours earlier she'd met with the Tory MP's shop steward, Sir Graham Brady, chair of the 1922 committee.
We've agreed that there will be a leadership election to be completed within the next week. This will ensure that we remain on a path to deliver our fiscal plans and maintain our country's economic stability and national security. I will remain as Prime Minister until a successor has been chosen. Thank you.
And here was Sir Graham saying how important it is that uncertainty about who runs the UK doesn't run beyond a week.
I think we're deeply conscious of the imperative in the national interest of resolving this clearly and quickly.
Her 45 days have been a study in chaos. First, there was Kwasi Kwarteng's mini-budget.
We're at the beginning of a new era.
That sent the pound and government bonds tumbling and interest rates soaring. Then there was the mother of all U-turns just 6 days ago, with Kwarteng replaced by Hunt and £32 billion of tax cuts reversed.
It was right, in the national interest, that I made the decisions I've made today to restore that economic stability.
Finally, as the new Chancellor Jeremy Hunt prepared to push up other taxes and cut public spending, yesterday we had the chaos of a Home Secretary being sacked and utter chaos in the Commons over a fracking vote.
I saw members being physically manhandled into another lobby.
What a mess. Complete chaos. And it's not just, a soap opera in the Tory party. They've inflicted huge damage on our economy and on our reputation as a country, and the public are paying through higher prices and mortgages.
For once, Labour and the SNP agree on what must come next.
What needs to happen now? Well, on a UK level, there must be a general election. It is a democratic necessity.
And this former Cabinet Minister spoke for most Tory MPs.
I feel sorry for the Prime Minister. I think she's been unlucky as well as having made some mistakes. But the truth is, we have to reset, go on to a new leader.
So who'll be Britain's next Prime Minister? This former Chancellor and runner-up over the summer, Rishi Sunak, has a strong claim because he warned Tory MPs that Liz Truss's tax-cutting plans would lead to disaster. And this current leader of the House of Commons, Penny Mordaunt, is regarded by many as the unity candidate. But of course, where there's a political opening, this recent Prime Minister makes a noise. On holiday in the West Indies, he's said to be thinking of joining the contest, though many think he'll struggle to get the 100 initial backers that are required. After the deluge, who'll be clearing up? Well, we'll know the runners and riders by 2 o'clock on Monday. Not long to wait. Robert Peston, ITV News.
The last Conservative leadership contest was actually longer than Liz Truss's time in power. This time round, the contest will last a week at most, with the new Prime Minister named in time for the Chancellor's economic statement on Halloween. As Robert mentioned, Rishi Sunak, Penny Mordaunt and even Boris Johnson are all in the frame, as well as Defence Secretary Ben Wallace, who is widely respected amongst the party. Crucially, though, this time, each candidate needs to get a backing of 100 MPs to be nominated. That means there'll be a maximum of 3, and it could see a winner announced very quickly, as our Deputy Political Editor Anushka Asthana reports.
For days, inside Parliament, one message from Tory MPs.
Clearly things have to change.
First a trickle.
I have submitted a letter to Sir Graham Brady.
Then, after a day of chaos, a flood.
It's been a very difficult 24 hours, and I think the Prime Minister is in a very tricky spot.
I think the current situation is a very uncomfortable one for me and for a lot of colleagues.
And then it was done. In less than 2 minutes, Liz Truss was finished and the conversations among Conservative MPs had turned.
Usually Thursdays are quite quiet in Parliament, but right now it is buzzing, and all over this place Tory MPs are meeting, discussing who can lead their party. They want stability, and many of them would like to unite around one candidate.
I do think that we need somebody who can bring both wings of the party together.
Is the whole party really going to agree on a top leadership team and on a top leadership person?
If we can't now, and whoever wins unite around them, well, the only alternative will be a general election. I think that will focus minds, given where the polling is at the moment. And if we can't do that, well, we'll deserve all we get from the electorate.
So who could it be? Out of the names being most muttered across Parliament,
de facto PM,
Chancellor Jeremy Hunt quickly ruled himself out. But Leader of the House Penny Mordaunt certainly did not. When asked what's the point of government business right now, she said,
I'm going to keep calm and carry on, and I would suggest everyone else do the same.
The other frontrunner has been keeping both calm and quiet. Many MPs want Rishi Sunak to make a deal with Penny Mordaunt because some on the right of the party don't like him. Perhaps that is about another name doing the rounds.
The message loud and clear from ordinary decent people of Peterborough, Conservative voters, was bring back Boris.
The former PM remains popular with Tory members and voters, but under a new rule, he'd have to get the nominations of 100 MPs.
Are you stitching up the rules here to keep Boris Johnson off the ballot?
We've fixed a high threshold, but a threshold that should be achievable by any serious candidate who has a realistic prospect of going through.
But Sir Graham Brady and Party Chair Jake Berry also made clear that going through to the members may not happen at all if MPs can agree on one name.
Reason that MPs want stability is that they are in shock about what's happened over the past few days, in shock about the last few weeks. That's why they want to agree on a candidate. But we've got over 300 Conservative MPs in there with a wide span of ideas. Many of them tell me they think Rishi Sunak is going to offer economic credibility, but they also know that while he's popular with the general population, he is less popular with some on the right. That's why they're talking about Penny Mordaunt as well. But many of those MPs will do whatever they can to block Boris Johnson, even if he is very popular with the members.
Okay, Anushka, thanks very much. As you can see, Robert has joined us here at Downing Street. Now, Liz Truss said that the process could last a maximum of 7 days because we could see a leader sooner than that, couldn't we?
No, that's exactly right. I mean, my goodness, we've had quite a few days, haven't we? Yeah. We've got a few more exciting days to come. Two very important changes to the way that Tories choose their leader this time. First, the threshold, as Nusha's been talking about, for anybody to get on the list has to be 100. Now, let's be clear, very few Tory MPs are likely to get, 100 initial backers. And actually, although there was a flurry of excitement earlier on today that Boris Johnson could make a comeback, when I talked to Tory MPs with a knowledge of the allegiances of their colleagues, they think Boris Johnson, after all his woes, all the scandal associated with the parties in that place, will struggle to reach that threshold. So maybe he won't throw his hat in the ring. That leaves two leading candidates, Penny Mordaunt, Rishi Sunak. Now, it is theoretically possible that on Monday there could be only those two left already. Now, then they've got a decision, those two. Does one of them simply drop out and back the other? Or do they do the other rule changes? There's going to be this indicative vote to find out which of two candidates, when it gets down to two, actually commands a broad majority of MP support. Now, to be clear, Graham Brady, sort of shop steward of MPs, the chairman of the party, Jake Berry, they both said that there is the facility for there to be a vote by members, but they both couldn't rule out that actually MPs would stitch up an agreement between themselves, that there'd only be one left. So I think it's possible that Monday or Tuesday we could know the identity of Britain's new Prime Minister.
All right, Robert. Well, make sure you stick around, because who knows what could happen before the end of the programme. Well, it was the shocked reaction of the financial markets to Liz Truss's economic plans that started her downfall, leaving the Bank of England forced to take emergency action. Well, our economics editor Joel Hills is outside the bank tonight. So what's the reaction been today?
Well, the market reaction's been generally positive, and it's little surprise Liz Truss came to power with a really simple plan: cut taxes, avoid a recession and turbocharge economic growth. She had blind faith in that plan. Many Conservative Party members believed in it too. The investors she was relying on to finance those tax cuts, though, did not. Her undoing 4 weeks ago was that mini budget. The effective rate that that the government pays to borrow money soared, as you can see here, raising borrowing costs, of course, for everyone else in the economy. Now, the yield on government bonds only fell when Liz Truss sacked her Chancellor, ditched most of her tax cuts and agreed to rethink her plans to subsidise everyone's energy bills next year. Now, whoever does become the next Prime Minister will be walking straight into a furnace. Inflation burns white hot, interest rates are rising, living standards are falling, and we sit on the edge of recession. They're also going to have to probably find £30 to £40 billion of either spending cuts or revenues from somewhere if they want to stabilise the finances. In brief, the outlook is absolutely awful, and there's always the danger that the market roars again.
All right, Joel, thanks very much. Well, rarely has modern British politics been so turbulent and chaotic, and it's been the topic of debate and conversation up and down the country. Ben Chapman heard the views of people in the marginal seat of Northampton.
At lunchtime, on the soggy streets of Northampton, the suddenness of the Prime Minister's departure came as something of a surprise.
The Prime Minister's just resigned, Liz Truss.
Now? Really?
What do you think?
Oh, I'm glad. They haven't given her much of a chance, have they? I'm glad.
Do you think she needed more time?
Yes, I do.
What if you know the Prime Minister's just resigned?
Yeah, I know.
What do you think?
Good. She was rubbish.
in this town, which has backed the Conservatives at every election since 2010. Most were agreed 44 stormy days has been enough.
God, that's good news for all of us, isn't it?
Well, I don't know, I'm going to ask you. What do you think?
Oh, I'm ecstatic.
Maybe next time somebody come new, I think maybe it's better.
Do you think she's done the right thing?
I think so.
Should have been done earlier.
You think she's made the right decision?
Yeah. Get Boris back.
And in the newsagents, where the writing had been on the wall, or at least the front pages,
it would probably be Rishi Sunak, but otherwise I'll definitely vote Labour.
I just know it's a big mess and someone needs to step up soon with a solution in order to help all these people that can't afford their bills.
the shopkeeper Andrew is a lifelong Conservative voter.
Do you think the Conservatives are capable of fixing this?
Yeah, I think so, yeah. I think they are capable eventually of sorting it if we get the right person in.
And that person for you is?
Rishi Sunak.
But nearby, in the Dreams Coffee Lounge, the nightmare scenario for many is letting the Conservatives choose yet another Prime Minister.
Would you be in favour of a general election?
Yes, I would.
You had to think quite hard about it.
Well, only that it will just stall. Everything stalls, doesn't it?
People have to be allowed a choice, albeit we tend to choose our own monsters, but be that as it may, it is the principle.
But the road to that election seems unlikely unless the Conservatives' new leader feels they can win again in places like this. Ben Chapman, ITV News, Northampton.
Let's go to our North of England reporter, Sangeeta Lal now, who's in Bolton tonight, where she spent the day hearing from locals. So, Sangeeta, how have people been reacting today to what's happened?
Well, a lot of people are shocked about what has happened. There's also been a mixture of relief and frustration too that this is happening again to a Prime Minister. And of course, the question many people are asking now is what happens next? Well, some people have told me they want a general election, some of those hoping for a change of government. But the majority of people I've spoken to here have told me they want Boris Johnson back.
He's got personality, hasn't he?
So do you think his personality is more important than everything that happened with Partygate?
Yeah, definitely.
Why?
Why?
Because did Partygate bother you?
Not really, no.
Who do you think should be the next Prime Minister?
So, Boris Johnson. I just feel that there's unfinished business.
There were failings. Everybody fails, you know, but I think he was strong.
The overriding feeling from so many I've spoken to here today, though, is they want stability. So many I've spoken to say they're struggling every day to get by as the cost of living keeps rising. They want someone who can improve the situation instead of a Downing Street revolving door.
Sangeeta, thank you. OK, let's hear the views from across the nations. Our Scotland reporter Louise Scott is in Glasgow. Our Wales reporter Rhys Williams in Cardiff, and UTV political editor Tracy McGee is in Belfast. I'm going to start with you, Louise. What's been the reaction there?
Well, the First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon, was quick off the mark, calling for a general election and, unsurprisingly, reiterating the need for independence, saying it's better than being at the mercy of this chaotic, dysfunctional, deeply broken Westminster system. Well, Scottish Labour might not agree with that route, but they are calling for the entire Conservative government to go. Meanwhile, Scottish Conservative leader Douglas Ross, who just this week said Liz Truss would lead them in the next general election, well, he's saying this decision is the right one. He's calling for unity in the party to increase stability in the market and the government and the country as a whole. Well, while campaigning, Liz Truss said to ignore Nicola Sturgeon, and she succeeded in that campaign pledge. Remarkably, no phone call was ever received between the two.
Well, the Prime Minister didn't promise to ignore the First Minister of Wales, Mark Drakeford, but she did call him a low-energy version of Jeremy Corbyn during that leadership campaign, so it wasn't a great start to their relationship, and to be honest, that relationship never really did get started because they too never shared a phone call. He today said that the government had been an utter failure and a general election was needed. The leader of the Welsh Conservatives is Andrew R.T. Davies. He's known for his loyalty to UK Conservative leaders, and he voted for Liz Truss. But today he said that she'd done the right thing by resigning. Now, he's known for being a Boris Johnson backer. However, today he wouldn't be drawn on what he called speculation on a return, saying instead that what the party needed was a unifying leader.
Well, while there have been growing calls for a general election, Northern Ireland is facing an assembly election no one wants. That's because the main unionist party, the DUP, are refusing to take their seats here at Stormont for as long as the Northern Ireland Protocol continues. That's the special trading arrangements post-Brexit. The current Secretary of State, Chris Heaton-Harris, says that the law requires him to call an election if a government has not been formed by next Friday. And that's what he's insisting he's going to do, even though the DUP say they won't go back into Stormont if the protocol continues. And of course, for as long as there is no Prime Minister, there's no chance of a breakthrough in the talks underway to try to solve the protocol between the UK and the EU. Northern Ireland is stuck in limbo.
OK, Tracy, thanks so much for that. And thanks to you as well, Louise and Reese. Well, we'll return to events here in Downing Street later on in the programme, but coming up on the ITV Evening News, a look at some of the day's other stories.
I took it to the very top of the church, asking for help. He was still left in a position of trust with children.
The epidemic leaving thousands of victims in its wake, the disturbing findings of a 7-year inquiry into child sexual abuse. And US citizen Anne Koulas admits responsibility for the death of Harry Dunn, killed in a crash outside a military base. His mother says justice has been done.
That promise that was made the night he was killed, it's done. I'm done.
Join us for those stories and more after the break.
Zoflora cleans homes beautifully. Try our new biodegradable antibacterial cleaning wipes.
Gucci Flora Gorgeous Jasmine, the new eau de parfum.
Tesco salmon fillets, carefully chosen for tenderness. 2-pack now, only £3.50 with your Tesco Club card or app.
Internet's playing up again. What a nightmare.
Dad, it won't stop spinning.
It's been loading forever.
Save yourself from broadband nightmares. Together, BT and EE bring you unbreakable Wi-Fi. Only BT's hybrid broadband is backed up by EE, the UK's best network.
We're always on. Multitask and multi-screen. Face our busy lives head on. Sometimes we need to hit refresh. Nivea Q10 Energy. Our formula with vitamin C to help fight the appearance of fine lines and recharge your glow. Nivea Q10 Energy. Face the world on full power again.
Miele washing machines and dryers are tested for 20 years use. 20 years of getting the perfect clean and care for your favourite clothes. Using less water and less energy. That's quality ahead of its time. Miele, immer besser.
Magical is happening in North Wales. Since 1884, inspiring people in magical places have been coming together to learn, to discover, to change lives, and make a difference to the world.
At
Emma, we know a great day starts with a great night's sleep. Everything we make helps you awaken your best. In the Emma Black Friday sale, get up to 60% off selected products. And right now, in the Early Bird Black Friday sale, get 55% off our hybrid mattress. Try our 200-night sleep trial now at emma-sleep.co.uk.
I won with ITV Win.
You never think it's going to happen to you.
I actually won.
I won £100,000. Do it now.
Make this worth your while, Belton.
All the classes and endless motivation on your schedule to keep you coming back. Time.
Drive! Come on!
And time.
Keep it up.
And time again.
Almost there, let's finish strong.
That's why 91% of households that join Peloton are still subscribed 12 months later. Motivation that moves you. See for yourself at onepeloton.co.uk.
We'll return to events here at Downing Street a little later on in the programme. But before that, failing to report child abuse should be a criminal offence. That's one of the recommendations of a landmark report into sexual abuse in England and Wales. The 7-year inquiry found children faced limitless cruelty and warned it's still endemic. And as Rebecca Barry reports, victims were often ignored or even blamed for the abuse.
Horrifying and deeply disturbing. Institutions prioritised their reputations over the protection of children, an epidemic that leaves tens of thousands of victims in its poisonous wake. Just some of the findings of a 7-year-long inquiry set up after a series of child sex abuse scandals, which heard from more than 7,000 victims.
It was a very sadistic, harsh regime for boys as young as 10.
Paul was abused at Ford Park School in Devon in the 1970s and has lived with the trauma ever since.
I became an alcoholic in my younger years and I stayed like that for 25 years. I was unable to hold jobs down, relationships always went out the window. And then the more I spoke, the easier it became.
The independent inquiry into child sexual abuse was set up in 2015 after scandals like Jimmy Savile and claims of an establishment cover-up. It heard evidence from church leaders, senior police officers and government ministers, producing 2.5 million pages of evidence. In its final report, it recommends a new law so people working in positions of trust who fail to report child sex abuse can be prosecuted, a scheme for compensating victims and survivors, and the creation of a child protection authority in England and in Wales. The chair of the inquiry wants the government to make this an absolute priority.
There's a lot going on at Westminster at the moment. What is your message to the government to ensure they take note, they listen to this?
We would expect any government to take this seriously. What can be more important than the future of children and their protection?
Are organisations still failing to protect children?
Yes, they are.
I took it to the very top of the church, asking for help. He was still left in a position of trust with children.
Joanne was abused as a child by someone in a Catholic church.
The act of abuse may be historic, but it's a life sentence. The effects, it's past, present, future. It's been humiliating, violating, intrusive, distressing, traumatic, goes on and on. We've done this so that others have it easier, that future children are protected, that future children are believed.
The government is promising the start of a new chapter. Rebecca Barry, ITV News.
A missile was released from a Russian fighter jet near an unarmed RAF aircraft. The UK plane was on routine patrol in international airspace over the Black Sea, and it was joined by 2 Russian jets. In a statement updating MPs on the war in Ukraine, Defence Secretary Ben Wallace told the Commons the incident happened in September and said Russia blamed a technical malfunction. 3 years after his death, the mother of Harry Dunn, says she's fulfilled her promise to him to get justice. Charlotte Charles says she's now satisfied after the woman who killed the 19-year-old motorcyclist pleaded guilty in a UK court. And Sakoulas appeared via video today from America, admitting causing Harry's death by careless driving. She hit him with her car whilst driving on the wrong side of the road outside a US airbase in Northamptonshire. Geraint Vincent now on the family's long battle.
3 years after the loss of their beloved son Harry, his parents stood outside the Old Bailey, having kept their promise to him and seen the person who caused his death admit to her crime to a British court.
Never broken a promise to my kids, and I wasn't going to start in the last 3 years. So for me, this can start to heal a little bit now. So yeah, I'm good. I'm good with it.
Harry was 19 years old and riding his motorcycle when he died after a collision with a car that was being driven on the wrong side of the road near an RAF base in Northamptonshire, used by the American military. Anne Sakoulas, filmed here outside her home in the United States, was the driver of that car. The US government asserted diplomatic immunity on her behalf in the days after the crash, and she left the UK to go home. She is still there. An extradition request made by the British government was rejected by the Americans. She agreed to face charges only if she could do so via video link, and that's how she entered her plea today. The limits of British justice were frankly expressed by the judge after the guilty plea had been made. Anne Sakoulas is a convicted offender, she said. But she went on, it is agreed that any sentence I impose is likely to be unenforceable. Due to the diplomatic protection she enjoys, Anne Sakoulas can't be made to attend in person her sentencing next month, though Harry's parents would appreciate it if she did as a sign of her remorse.
Anne will do what Anne wants to do. Whether she comes, I don't know, but at least she knows how we feel about that.
This family is clearly satisfied that justice has been done, but it happened only because of the defendant's consent, and the British legal system has never seen anything quite like it. Geraint Vincent, ITV News.
OK, let's return to our main story tonight, the resignation of Liz Truss, who has become Britain's shortest-serving Prime Minister. She announced her departure here this afternoon, admitting she could no longer deliver her mandate from the Conservative Party.
I have therefore spoken to His Majesty the King to notify him that I am resigning as leader of the Conservative Party. This morning I met the chairman of the 1922 committee, Sir Graham Brady. We've agreed that there will be a leadership election to be completed within the next week.
So now all eyes turn to who will win that contest, with some of the names being touted, including Rishi Sunak and the man Liz Truss replaced in number 10, Boris Johnson. Well, it has been, to use the word of the moment, an extraordinary 45 days. When Liz Truss was elected to power by Conservative Party members, it was because they liked her promise of low tax and high growth. But what should have been the highlight of her political career turned quickly to a spectacular failure. Our political correspondent Libby Vina looks back at the Prime Minister's rise and history-making fall.
She only became Prime Minister on the 6th of September.
I have just accepted Her Majesty the Queen's kind invitation to form a new government.
And despite being the shortest-serving Prime Minister in British history, she still clocked up an impressive array of policy U-turns. It seems she was always prepared to change her mind. As a young Liberal Democrat, she opposed the monarchy.
Everybody in Britain should have the chance to be a somebody. But only one family can provide the head of state.
After becoming a Conservative and getting elected, she had a series of ministerial jobs, best known for her strident views on cheese.
We import 2/3 of our cheese. That is a disgrace.
Boris Johnson made her Foreign Secretary, which allowed her to pose for more than one photograph reminiscent of Margaret Thatcher. She said each one was a coincidence. While others resigned over Johnson's behaviour, Truss stayed in post, putting her in a strong position ahead of the leadership race, even as she struggled to find her way out of her own launch event. She stood on a low-tax platform, throwing in a bit of Euroscepticism along the way.
President Macron, friend or foe? The jury's out.
Her economic policies exasperated her main opponent, Rishi Sunak.
It is.
Liz, we have to be honest. We have to be honest. But borrowing your way out of inflation isn't a plan, it's a fairy tale.
But the Tory party membership believed it, and Truss was elected leader.
I will deliver a bold plan to cut taxes and grow our economy.
4 weeks ago came the disastrous mini-budget with its unfunded tax cuts.
But I'm not going to cut the additional rate of tax today, Mr. Speaker. I'm going to abolish it altogether.
There was already huge unease at her first conference as leader.
So you won't change your mind on the 45p rate?
No.
A few hours later, she did change her mind, dropping the plan.
I have 3 priorities for our economy: growth, growth and growth.
But the turmoil in the financial markets continued. 10 days later, Truss sacked her Chancellor, U-turned on a pledge not to raise corporation tax, and held a short and very painful press conference.
It is clear that parts of our mini-budget went further and faster than markets were expecting.
Trying to shore up her crumbling authority, she asked Jeremy Hunt to be her Chancellor. He ditched most of the mini-budget, leaving her with no credibility. At Prime Minister's questions, she insisted she wasn't going anywhere.
Mr. Speaker, I am a fighter and not a quitter.
But then yesterday she lost another minister, sacking the Home Secretary. And there were ugly scenes in the voting lobbies as she tried to railroad through a vote on fracking. Overnight, the trickle of confidence letters had suddenly become a flood, MPs deciding enough was enough.
Well, Libby's in the House of Commons for us now. And Libby, you're with supporters of 2 of the likely candidates aiming to be the next Prime Minister, aren't you?
Yes, indeed. I'm with Richard Holden, the MP for North West Durham, who is backing Rishi Sunak, and Bob Seeley, the MP for the Isle of Wight, who is backing Penny Mordaunt. Now, your candidate did run last time. He lost. What went wrong and what will be different in your view this time?
Well, I think the economics is everything is all based on that at the moment. I think the big issue we're facing as a country is credibility on the economic front and general political credibility. I think Rishi has both those things in bucket loads. That's exactly what we need now to really steady the markets, get everything under control. You know, I personally feel, sad for Liz, but I think it's the right decision now. And we've got to get forwards, move forwards, and have that economic credibility message at the core. Rishi was Chancellor for 2 years. People know he supported them through the pandemic and at the start of the energy crisis. And I think that's what's really pushing him forward at the moment.
He was blamed, though, by some for being the man who they say wielded the knife against the previous Prime Minister. Do you think he can get over that hurdle this time?
I'm absolutely certain he can. I think, actually, when you look at what people in my constituency, I'm sure in Bob's as well, are really concerned about, energy prices, concerned about the economic situation, and what they want is real leadership on that front at the moment.
Bob Seeley, why should people in your party choose Penny Mordaunt?
Because I think Penny has the best set of qualities, the best ministerial experience, the best personal qualities in her empathy, likeability, decision-making ability to unite our party and, most importantly, lead our great country.
She came third last time, though people put their hopes in Liz Truss. Isn't there a danger that, given she doesn't have much experience in cabinet, her premiership could implode as well?
Penny has had 9 different government roles across 8 departments, and she's served in 3 cabinet roles. So she's probably going to be the most experienced of any candidate, whoever, if it's just Rishi or if it's other people as well. So she is the experienced candidate because she's been in government most of the last 10 years.
She is quite a threat to Rishi Sunak, isn't she? I mean, there is a danger that he could lose this time around.
I think what you've seen with Rishi over the last couple of years, people have seen him deliver for them, whether it's the furlough scheme, whether it's that support for small business during the pandemic, more recently, whether it's that support for people who have been really facing tough times with the energy bills. And what people are looking for at the moment is that proper experience of government in a really senior role for a long period of time. And I think that's why Rishi, with those qualities, and also that ability to reach out to all parts of the country, because we are a broad party, the only party really of every part of the country, city, town and rural areas, that's what they want to see, and I think that's why Rishi will get it this time.
Briefly, there's talk that Boris Johnson might throw his hat in the ring. Do you think he's a serious contender this time?
I have huge respect for Boris. I have huge respect for Rishi. Whoever wins, we have got to unite, and I'm sure that we will. Yes. I hope personally it's under Penny, because she's got the experience, the personal qualities to unite our party and lead our nation.
Thank you both very much. Certainly a very interesting week ahead.
Indeed, thanks very much, Libby. Well, Robert is still with us, and both Ben and Rich are talking in glowing terms about the party and looking ahead to the future. But one thing that is undeniable, this whole thing has been hugely damaging to the Conservative Party.
Look, I mean, the Tory party fell significantly behind Labour when Boris Johnson was mired in that Partygate scandal, those illegal parties that took place just across the road from us here. But by the time that Liz Truss took over, the gap was, 15, 20 points behind Labour. Today, most polls are showing that the Tories are 30 to 35 points behind Labour. These are gaps we haven't seen in decades, and if they were translated into a general election result, that would see Labour with a majority of sort of almost unthinkable 300 or so. So the hole that Liz Truss has left them in is very deep indeed. Now, in politics, what goes down does eventually come up again. The question is how long. And the problem for the Tories is that they are not just in a political mess, but the economic mess that Liz Truss caused means, in Jeremy Hunt's words, or the words of the new Chancellor, really tough, unpopular decisions are going to be made actually in just a few days' time. On October the 31st, he's having what to all of us will look like a budget. He calls it a medium-term fiscal statement. Public spending will be cut. Taxes will go up. Really important benefits. Universal credit. We still don't know if it's going up by that 10.1% increase in inflation. And so anybody who takes over knows that in the coming weeks and months, the party is likely to become, for a period, even more unpopular before it can get on the road to recovery politically, because it's got to fix the economy. And that's one reason why, despite the fact that we've got Keir Starmer and Nicola Sturgeon saying, have an election tomorrow, I tell you, any new leader is going to be desperate to have the election at the last possible moment 2 years from now.
Indeed, Robert, thanks very much. But it's still to come on the programme. Well, the political ripples from Westminster affecting people all around the country as mortgage rates rise again.
For years, I've called for a more modern monarchy that reflects the world outside.
I don't think it's my behaviour that's threatening its survival.
And why Dame Judi Dench has accused the Crown of crude sensationalism. See you after this short break.
Revolut your way into instant payments. Download Revolut now.
We used to think health was white coats and stethoscopes. That was then.
Deliveroo presents Decision Time. With offers on your favourite restaurants, what's it going to be this time? Make your choice on the app.
What is it that makes the SCS Autumn Sale so inviting? Is it the fabulous savings on sofas with something for every home and budget? Like this gorgeous design at only $329. Or maybe the free fitting offer on hundreds of quality carpets. Or is it just good old-fashioned value? With beautifully crafted sofas from only £10 a month. It's all of these things. But this autumn saving must end soon at SCS.
Welcome back. The recent political and economic turmoil sparked by those behind this door has left millions counting the cost across the country, especially mortgage holders and renters. ITV News has learned the average interest rate of a 2-year fixed mortgage is now around 6.6%. The rocketing cost of borrowing has put the plans of many on hold, and some renters are facing high costs too. Our consumer editor Chris Troy heard from some of those affected.
The buyer, the renter and the home loan professional. Mortgage mayhem is not just about politics, it's mainly about people. Fran Roberts was about to buy her first home. She's worked hard, saved for years, made plans and finally got the deposit. Then mortgage costs rose after the government's mini-budget.
Absolutely devastated. I was really looking forward to owning my first home, and suddenly I don't have a home anymore. I'm living, under someone else's roof and hoping for the best.
Just how much has all of this impacted on your future plans?
I've finally got the deposit saved up, and now it's been taken away again.
Before the mini-budget on September the 23rd, an average 2-year mortgage fix was 4.74%. Taking one out today would be 6.65%, according to new data given to ITV News. That's an increase in monthly repayments of £230. Tenants too have been hit by these higher borrowing costs.
Rents are going up.
As the impact of higher mortgages ripples across the housing market, Richard Joslin now faces more than a £200 a month increase in rent.
He directly cited to me that the reason he was increasing the rent is because of the increases in mortgages. It's a direct correlation.
All this has a big impact on your life now and your plans for the future. How's it left you feeling?
Bitter. We're going to have to make savings, cut holidays, maybe cut plans to try and get on the property market ourselves because we can't afford a mortgage ourselves anymore.
Mortgage broker Karam Dav is seeing the emotional as well as the financial cost.
The speed of this has taken everyone by surprise, and I've never seen anything like it. They were expecting at least 3.3 and that was fine. But when they're seeing rates of 5.5, 6, that is causing problems. And it's not just the mortgage, it's the rise of everything else. A lot of people are rightfully worried.
For millions, the numbers no longer add up as mortgages remain part of a continuing turmoil many say they simply cannot afford. Chris Troy, ITV News.
Some other news today, and communications to the Scottish Islands of Shetland have been severely disrupted after a subsea cable was damaged. Police have declared a major incident after the cable between the islands and the mainland was cut. The force said that some landlines and mobiles are not usable. Repairs to fix the outage are ongoing. And Cristiano Ronaldo has been dropped for Manchester United's trip to Chelsea on Saturday after he stormed off before the conclusion of last night's win over Tottenham. Acting royalty has become the latest critic of the hit Netflix drama The Crown. Dame Judi Dench, who's of course played Queen Victoria twice in films, is out at the series for what she called crude sensationalism. She wants a disclaimer to be added on screen of fears that many viewers will think what's being portrayed is actually true. Amy Lewis has more.
Trailers are usually released to get people talking.
Perhaps I have more to reflect on than most.
But The Crown has no problem attracting viewers. Producers, though, may be less keen on the criticism it's attracting.
Have royal scandals damaged the country's reputation?
Dame Judi Dench has become the latest high-profile figure to call for a disclaimer to be added to each episode, making it explicitly clear that it is not always a strictly accurate portrayal. In a letter to The Times, the Oscar-winning actress said, "The closer the drama comes to our present times, the more freely it seems willing to blur the lines between historical accuracy and crude sensationalism."
You, as future king, have a duty.
The fifth series of The Crown depicts the royal family in the 1990s, dramatising a decade that many can remember.
For years, I've called for a more modern monarchy that reflects the world outside.
To suggest that the Prince of Wales, as he then was, would have had a conversation with the Prime Minister, urging the Prime Minister, in effect, to help him get rid of the Queen so that he can take over, is nonsense on stilts.
Our battle till the end.
Netflix has defended the series, saying it has always been presented as a drama based on historical events. But critics believe in some storylines, fiction is dressed up as fact, and that should be made clear on screen. Amy Lewis, ITV News.
What we've seen here in recent weeks may sometimes have seemed like a TV drama, but truth is that it's been all too real. The unimaginable chaos triggered by the country's decision makers has been of a scale that few of us have seen before, and has had an impact millions are still reeling from. So we've got to end the programme with some final thoughts from our political editor, Robert Peston. And Robert, I'd like you to sum up Liz Truss's 45 days in 45 seconds.
Okay, well, I can probably do it in 5 seconds. I mean, high hopes, dashed hopes, chaos, costs for all of us. The big mistake that Liz Truss made was she thought she understood the way the economy works more than the experts who've been working on it for years. One of the first things she and her ex-chancellor did was to sack a senior official at the Treasury, not take advice from people who tell her what the effects of tax cuts would be. And so they embarked on these mini-budget tax cuts, which we couldn't afford. The markets turned against us, and unfortunately the way that markets have turned against us means that there are now going to be public spending cuts that are going to damage all of us, particularly people on lower incomes. It's not a great legacy.
Thanks, Robert. Just over 45 seconds. But that brings us to the end of our programme as Liz Truss counts down her final days here as Prime Minister. When she walks out of that door for one last time as leader next week, it'll be as the country's shortest serving PM ever. It was brief, but we can all agree that it was eventful. And it's not over yet. The process of finding a new leader and Prime Minister now starts all over again. Next up, the weathers, and Juliet will be here with the latest at the slightly later time of 10 past 10. But from everybody here, have a good evening. Bye-bye.